Heard that on a movie earlier. Just wanted to share it with you all. All right. I am Aaron. This is Aaron's Audio Corner, and I'm reviewing the PS Audio Aspen FR10. I was loaned these speakers from the manufacturer to review. They haven't seen the review. I'm not getting paid or any of that kind of stuff. They just sent me the speaker. I'm reviewing it, sending it back. That's it. I'll go ahead and say that at $10,000 a pair, you're probably expecting a lot. Objectively speaking, these speakers fall short of some things that I would have liked to have seen them do. But subjectively speaking, they sound fantastic. First, let's get some specs out of the way, just real fast. If you want to know more, you can go to the website and read it there. The Aspen FR10 has two 6-inch mid-bass at the bottom, three 6x9-inch passive radiators in the back, an 8-inch planar ribbon mid-range, and a 2.5-inch planar ribbon tweeter. They're about 41 inches tall, weigh about 76 pounds each, and have a metal base. Now, these speakers are built very, very well. They are very sturdy, and they come in two different colors, a white satin finish and a black satin finish. With that out of the way, let's talk about what I heard. So when I got these in, I listened for about a week before I even started measuring them. I never saw the measurements before I listened to them. As far as the room goes, it was an 18 by 14 by 9 foot room. I was listening at about 10 feet away. The manufacturer's manual states to start the speakers placed at about 18 inches off the wall behind them, and then slowly bring them out to the room until you find an appropriate sweet spot. Two things that I noticed about this speaker consistently that I really like. One is the mid-bass and lower mid-range transition area. Man, it is sweet. That 200 to 500 hertz region just sounds really good. There's a lot of strong upper mid-bass punch that I really appreciated. And I attribute that, and I may be wrong, but I attribute that to having the woofers near the floor. In my previous video discussing the PSP Audio Imagine T65, I talked about the Allison effect. A speaker placed near a wall, having a reflection off the floor, all the boundaries that are typical in a room have a initial bounce, right? And that initial bounce is a reflection. So you're going to get a rear wall reflection come off. It's going to create a cancellation, and you're also going to get a floor cancellation. That delay from the direct sound to the reflected sound is going to create a null. And that null typically winds up in that region of where you're getting some sound, some characteristic of the mid-bass. Not necessarily the fundamental of the 50 to 80 hertz region or anything like that, but that sound of the mid-bass hit. So when you place the drivers closer to the floor, like the FR10 has done, you mitigate that floor bounce and you basically smooth out that response through that region. Now, I may be wrong, but I think there's a lot of benefit to doing that audibly because in my experience, it seems to line up with a more well-blended lower mid-range, upper mid-bass. And in fact, when I was DIYing my speakers back in like 2013, 14, 15, somewhere around there, I did a lot of experimentation with using two 8-inch mid-bass drivers on the side of the cabinet, but then also using a single 10-inch driver on the front of the cabinet, up high, in the middle, down low. And I wound up going with somewhere in the middle to strike a good balance between getting rid of that floor bounce, but also having a nice cohesive sound from the mid-range to the mid-bass driver. And so maybe I'm biased by that and I'm just unaware of it, but I want to be frank with you and let you know that I put a lot of stock into seeing those drivers on the floor, and I think that certainly has an effect on why the mid-range and mid-bass handoff is just so good in overall tonality. Per the manufacturer's manual, I did start off with the speakers about 18 inches off the wall. So the back of the speaker to the wall behind it, about 18 inches. And then I slowly moved them out to the room. Now, what I noticed was that I slowly moved them out into the room. The mid-bass, lower mid-bass, like say like the 50 to 80 hertz region, tended to sound a little bit less bloated, which kind of makes sense. When you put a speaker right next to a wall, you're going to excite the lower frequencies even more. But it wasn't to the effect that I've noticed with other speakers. Now, in the data, we're going to understand why. Basically, these speakers are designed to have a little bit of a shelf around 150 hertz where it dips down that mid-bass response, so you can put the speaker a little bit closer to the wall. You don't have to bring these out 3 feet into the room like you might with other hi-fi type speakers. The other thing that I liked, in addition to that mid-bass, mid-range transition, is the soundstage width. It sounds so nice and wide. It remains consistent. Now, if you've watched my other videos, you know I've talked about speakers that, may be wide at one frequency and then collapse in another frequency. This speaker doesn't do that. They do narrow in radiation as you go higher in frequency, but they're not shifting around their soundstage radiation pattern where at 2 kilohertz, you may have a sound that's over here, but it should be over here aligned with something else. You don't have that issue. So there is very good, consistent, wide response with these speakers, and I really appreciated that. One track I like to listen to is Sweet Emotion by Aerosmith. There's a lot of I think it's like a vocoder. I'm not really sure, but it has like a, and they go, and does that. Listen to it, you'll know what I mean. But the cool thing about that track is that there's a lot of layering, a lot of panning going on. And with these speakers, what I noticed was that when they panned those sounds, they stayed where they should, but there was also space in between. So another track I used to identify imaging of, maybe focus of images within the soundstage and placement of images within the soundstage is Michael Jackson's Thriller track. So what that does is that starts off on the right with footsteps and it walks across to the left. Now, you guys maybe flip-flop, but it starts on the right, walks across to the left. With speakers with a more narrow soundstage, what you'll notice is that those steps are less precisely defined. And so it may sound like they're kind of stacking up on top of each other. But with these speakers, with their consistently wide radiation, you don't have that effect. Those steps are clearly placed. You can shut your eyes and just point to them in the soundstage, which is I love stereography. Is that a word? I love stereo. I love it for the effects that you have. And yes, I understand that they are truly just effects. But when you have speakers that are well matched with a wide radiation, you get a really good sense of envelopment. And that's what these speakers do. There's a good wide soundstage, but the instruments and the layering and the precision of objects within the soundstage are very well defined. And I really appreciated that. Now let's talk about the high frequency. With the FR30, I've read reports where people said that the high frequency was too boosted. So with the FR10, I'll be honest, I kind of expected that, aimed directly at me. So I started off with them aimed directly at me. And yeah, they are a little bit elevated, but they weren't terribly elevated, not to the degree of something like a Martin Logan or some of the Focal speakers that I reviewed where there's a clear high frequency bump. Even Klipsch has that issue with, and I say issue, it's an issue for me, has that characteristic with some of their speakers. Not all of the models within these brands, but some of them that I've heard. So that's kind of where I'm pulling from. Now, with that said, what I did wind up doing was towing the speakers about 20 degrees off axis, meaning that instead of pointed directly at me, they're pointed kind of behind my head. And that's actually what the manual suggests, and it worked out well. What that does is that alleviates that high frequency bump a little bit and kind of smooths out the overall sound to a point where I would consider the speaker more of a warm sounding type speaker. Another track I like to listen to is Wanna Be Starting Something by Michael Jackson. Look, I'm a Thriller fan, okay? I know some people don't like Michael Jackson. That's fine. This is what I grew up listening to and I love it. That song has a very distinct shaker in it. I think it's on the right. And when that shaker is going with speakers that have too much treble, it can be grating on your ears. It can be obvious and it can almost sound like detail or resolution. But the fact of the matter is that they just have high frequency bump and it's exaggerated and it makes it stand out. And it actually will stand out a little bit more forward of the soundstage. With these speakers, I didn't have that issue. And it was really cool how it did a good job of balancing the high frequency detail, but it never sounded bright. It never sounded aggressive. And I really could listen to these speakers for hours on end because I did without having any feeling of I need to take a break from these speakers. In general, these speakers have a very good dynamic sound. As I said earlier, the distortion is quite low, and you're going to see that in some of my upcoming results from my measurements. The bass, mid-bass is fantastic. The mid-range sounds really good. The only downside that I heard when listening to these speakers is there's a bit of a scoop around 600 hertz. Now, I'll be honest with you, I didn't notice that in my initial listening, but going back and looking at the data and seeing it and then listening to the speakers again and applying some EQ there, what I found was that when I bumped up that region, the vocals sounded more full. So without that, the vocals don't quite sound as full. Going higher in frequency, there's a pretty narrow but strong dip around, I want to say it's like 6 kilohertz or 7 kilohertz. I didn't hear that again before. I went back after looking at the measurements. I applied some EQ there and it didn't really help. Matter of fact, I'm really sensitive to the 4 to 6 kilohertz or 8 kilohertz region where there's sibilance. And when it stands out, like if there's a little bump there, it will annoy the heck out of me. So I would much prefer to have a dip at that frequency than a bump for sure. Now, in an ideal world, it's more neutral, and maybe in future versions of the speaker or other speakers, maybe PS Audio will update this. I don't necessarily know if it was intended or not, but personally speaking, I would prefer for the overall response to be smoother, at least in that 600 hertz region where I can get a little bit more fullness of the vocals. Now, if you told me, Aaron, I will give you that 600 hertz back and I will give you that 6 kilohertz back, I would say, don't worry so much about the 6 kilohertz. Give me the 600 back. And they say, okay, cool, I'll give that back, but I'm going to take away the soundstage width, and or I'm going to take off the mid bass, lower mid range attack clarity. Then I would say, leave 600 as it is, because I want one or both of those other things. I need, because to me, those are what really make this speaker stand out from other speakers. Other speakers don't seem to do either of those things as well as these speakers do. And I mean, to some degree, if I'm listening blind, then maybe I might pick out other speakers. But just in my opinion, those are really two attributes about this speaker that I really liked about this speaker. And those are the two things that would make me want to purchase this speaker, personally speaking. Speaking. All right. So let's go ahead and talk about some of the objective data. I'll point to some of the issues that I see in the data, relay kind of how that relates to what I heard in my listening test, and then we'll wrap this thing up. All of the data that you're about to see is generated using my Klippel near-field scanner. It is a state-of-the-art device that allows me to get anechoic data of a speaker in a non-anechoic room, such as my garage, which you see in this video clip. The on-axis frequency response suggests that the speaker's average sensitivity is about 84.4 decibels at 2.83 volts, 1 meter. And if we go up here and look, I talked earlier about around 600 hertz, there's a dip. Well, here we see it right there. And then we have another dip around 1.2, kind of peaks up around 2K. And then the more significant dip at around 6 kilohertz or so. Now let's talk about the bass. See how this bass steps down at around 150 hertz? This goes back to what I was mentioning earlier, where I said that you can place these speakers closer to a wall and not have a lot of boomy bass. The F3 is at 47 hertz, which means the negative 3 dB point is 47 hertz. That's where it starts rolling off. But what's the roll-off profile look like? Well, it kind of rolls off pretty smoothly until about maybe 30, 40 hertz, somewhere right here. And then F10 is at 28 hertz. So it hits that knee and falls off. Really what this means is you could possibly listen to these speakers in a room without a subwoofer. There's not many cases where I would recommend not using a subwoofer. So if you still want to use a subwoofer, definitely go for it. But if you're like, I don't really want to spend the extra money on a subwoofer, it doesn't fit my aesthetic or whatever, you could possibly get away with not needing a subwoofer, especially if the music that you listen to doesn't really extend below about 40 hertz or so. This is the estimated in-room response, which almost always lines up with what I measure in the seated position above about 500 hertz or so, because below about 500 hertz in most rooms, it's pretty much room dominated. The speaker is the dominant force for the overall tonality of the sound above about 500 hertz. So that's why I like to use this graphic, because this translates pretty well to most people's rooms. And then what I do is I draw in a line, kind of giving you an idea of how I heard the speaker in my room. In this case, what I'm calling attention to is this kind of a scooped mid-range sound. And that's really the only audible issue, if you will, that I heard. This is the horizontal radiation. So compared to directly on axis, how much SPL is there to the side of the speaker as you go walk around from the front to the side of it? Does it maintain its composure, or does it become pretty narrow pretty fast? Well, as you can see from here, if you look at the red, that's the higher SPL region. And this little bit of a lighter red is the negative 6 dB point. So that's where the sound has fallen by about 6 dB. That doesn't happen until you get to about 80 or 85 degrees to the side of the speaker. Basically, you have to be on the side of the speaker for you to notice that there's a pretty significant fall off. And again, that's what gives this speaker the soundstage width that it does, because it radiates so widely. And so again, I think this kind of tracks well with what I heard. I would encourage you to not use absorption for this speaker, because if you do, a 2-inch panel is probably going to absorb around maybe 8 kilohertz a little bit. And as it goes higher frequency, it's going to absorb more of that. And I don't think that you want to do that, because this speaker's wide sound is due in part to its wide radiation hitting the sidewalls and sounding like there's more things going on than maybe there really is from the speaker itself. I like that. Vertically, however, you need to make sure that you are right at that tweeter line. These were designed to be listened at that tweeter point. Talk about distortion now. 86 decibels at 1 meter looks good. 96 decibels at 1 meter. You're still below 1% all through the mid-range. You're ramping up above about 3% at about 60 hertz, but I didn't have any issues with noticing distortion being a problem in my listening. Of course, that's all with just a single swept tone where it goes, but what happens when you play music? Well, we have a way to test that through multi-tone distortion testing. That plays a set of tones and it really kind of sounds somewhat like pink noise, but what it does is it plays multiple tones at the same time and then it measures the distortion. So that would be not just harmonic distortion, but modulated distortion as well. That's what we have here. Now I had this black line drawn because that's kind of just my personal reference line. If it's above this, and I might say that's more problematic, but as long as it's below it, I think, you're probably okay. Of course, it is frequency dependent and content dependent, but again, it's just a quick reference point for me. This high frequency distortion, I think this is the lowest that I've seen from any speaker I've tested so far. So overall, this is one of the best speakers I've tested in terms of multi-tone distortion. Let's talk about dynamic range. Now, the way I test this is I sweep a speaker at 76 decibels, and then I sweep it again at 86, 96, and then 102. Those are shown through these different color lines. A speaker that has perfect transients, perfect dynamic range, would have all of those color lines stacked right on top of this black line. But that doesn't happen in the real world. So what we want is a speaker that doesn't deviate too much from that. And usually I would say like maybe 1 dB of compression or enhancement is going to be okay. But what I don't want is 3 decibels of compression because then you're losing attack. If you have a kick drum come in and it's supposed to have maybe 26 decibels of dynamic range, but it has 15 decibels of dynamic range, then you're not getting the full weight of that attack, that punch. Like that dynamic range is just softened. So with this particular speaker, actually it does pretty well. The only areas that kind of make me go, well, that's interesting is this resonance right through here around maybe like 800 hertz or so. There's a little bit, something going on there. Then in the highest frequency around maybe like 12 kilohertz, there's more compression right there. Do I think you're going to hear that? Probably not. And honestly, a couple things. One is music doesn't really have a lot of content that high in frequency. So more than likely, the sounds that are going to be coming there are not going to have the power required to make it compress this much. And also, if you're listening that loud, I think you might have other issues. So just kind of maybe keep that in mind. On the lower end, instead of compression, sound being taken away, you have enhancement, which is sound being added. And so below about 50 hertz, what it actually looks like is you get additional output. So it may sound a little bit more punchy, a little bit more attacky. I'm making up a word here. And I can't lie and tell you that that's a definite thing, but that's just kind of my hunch based on my experience doing this and relaying that to measurements. That wraps up my review of the PS Audio FR10. A quick recap. Sonically, it sounds really good to me. Width is incredible. I love the stereo width, the separation, the depth of stage. I like that you can place it close to a wall and not suffer depth of stage issues. There's still a wide sound stage around and just a very enveloping sound stage that I really like about these speakers. That mid bass, that lower mid range, all of that area sounds really, really good to me. I love the tight punch, the attack, the dynamicism of these speakers is just, I don't know, subjectively speaking, it's definitely way up there. I don't know if it's in my number 1 spot or number 2 or number 3, but it's definitely way the heck up there. I like the look of it. I like the sound of it. The objective data shows areas that could be improved. So you can use that information to decide, is this a speaker that you want to pursue or not? In my opinion, this is a more warm sounding speaker, not necessarily entirely neutral, but I like the overall sound profile of the speaker. If you're looking for a speaker that is in this price range and this kind of aesthetic, it's definitely worth giving a shot. With that said, if you want to support me in doing what I'm doing here, you can join me at patreon.com/Erin's Audio Corner, or if you need to buy something from Crutchfield, Amazon, Audio Advice, anything like that, I have a bunch of generic affiliate links in my comment section below. Anything that you purchase through that will help me earn a small commission at no additional cost to you, which is what allows me to keep doing what I'm doing, and I really would appreciate that. I will talk to y'all later. Take care. Peace.